Now, this is a move that excites me, Mafia. Curtis Samuel, 3 years, $30 million to become a Buffalo Bill. Curtis Samuel of the Washington Commanders, and before that, the Carolina Panthers, has signed with the Bills to be the new explosive target for the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. I don't know how long I've been waiting for this move to happen. And what I mean by that is I don't know how long I've been waiting for the Bills to add an explosive speed receiver that can threaten the defense and that can create after the catch in the screen game. Curtis Samuel is a dangerous playmaker, and he will join Stephon Diggs and this receiving core along with Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. They signed Mack Hollins. More on that in a minute. And Shakir, which is where Bills fans might be mistaken. There will be a take that Curtis Samuel is too similar to Shakir. But I would not be mistaken on Curtis Samuel's skill set. Yes, he's primarily played in the slot throughout the course of his career, but that does not mean he can't play on the outside. He has throughout his career, and he's been effective. I think that storyline will be overblown, especially with how you can move receivers around, motion them into different personnel packages, into different alignments, and along with the fact that currently on your team, you still have Stephon Diggs, which means you still have an X receiver on the outside. I wouldn't be too concerned about the fact that Samuel and Shakir have some sort of crossover impact on the roster. I would certainly suggest that after Gabe Davis left, the Bills were in desperate need of wide receivers. And I would even argue that the Bills needed a wide receiver whether they had Gabe Davis or not, because personally, I've never been the biggest Gabe Davis fan. And I'm here to tell you, Bills Mafia, that you have upgraded at the wide receiver position, regardless of alignment, position, or whatever. People are going to spin it. But Curtis Samuel is a better football player than Gabriel Davis. Davis is closer to a Josh Allen product than a fantastic wide receiver. That might be a bold take. I do not care. That's why you're here. Curtis Samuel is a player that has played with next to zero quarterbacks. I mean, look at his career. Who has he played with at the quarterback position that you would say, oh my goodness, wow, that quarterback is so good? I think maybe he played with Cam Newton for a season. Maybe. I'm not even sure. If it was, it might have been his rookie year. I can't recall. But he's been in Carolina. He's been in Washington. Neither place has had a stable franchise quarterback. And throughout the course of his career, he has constantly put up 600 plus yards when healthy. Okay? Since 2019, he's had 4 600 plus yard seasons. He's had 3 60 plus reception seasons, 4 50 plus reception seasons. And I still believe that there's untapped potential with Curtis Samuel. As a Patriots fan, I wanted my team to sign Curtis Samuel more than once. At 5'11", 195, Curtis Samuel is an electric player who once ran a 4.31 in the 40-yard dash. He can fly. Okay, Curtis Samuel can fly. I think he has a very underrated skill set in terms of route running capabilities. And I think right away, you're going to notice that defenses will play the Bills slightly differently and will have to with Curtis Samuel at wide receiver. Because he's not like Gabe Davis. He's not like these receivers you've had over the last couple of years who can't really run that well or threaten a defense down the field. Samuel, he is primarily an underneath receiver, but if you let him unleash vertically, he will run past a cornerback. And that is the scare that the Bills have been missing, in my opinion, in their receiving core. Last year, he played 571 snaps in one of the more underrated receiving cores in football, the Washington Commanders, along with Jahan Dotson, first-round pick, and Terry McLaurin, great receiver. Curtis Samuel graded as the 53rd best receiver in football according to PFF. The year before that in Washington, he graded as the 40th best receiver. His best season of his career according to PFF is 2020, where he ranked 27th. In that season in 2020, it was his final in Carolina. He had 77 catches for 851 yards and 3 touchdowns. And just checking who the quarterback was in 2020, it was Teddy Bridgewater. So Curtis Samuel has never played with a quarterback such as Josh Allen, or with the skill set of Josh Allen, who can unleash the ball down the field. Also, Curtis Samuel is a dangerous player when you give him the ball on a handoff, or an end around, or a jet sweep, or a screen. Over the course of his career, he's also handled touches in the backfield. In 2020, he had 41 rushes for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. The year before that, he had 19 rushes for 130 yards and a touchdown. In 2022 in Washington, he had 38 carries for 187 yards and a touchdown. And those yards per attempts are 6.8, 4.9, and 4.9, which is a pretty effective rusher. So he can also add to the rushing capabilities. On top of that, I think there's crossover here with Joe Brady, if I'm not mistaken, who is the offensive coordinator of Buffalo. That actually just kind of sprung to my mind right now. I'm not sure why that took me so long. But Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, and trying to recall which season that was, it must have been 2020 or 2021, right? There must have been some sort of crossover there. Yes, so Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers in 2020. Okay, this is all coming together now. I was trying to figure out what the take is here, but also the fact that the Carolina Panthers have a lot of people in the front office, or at least there was some crossover when McDermott was hired, right, from the front office of Carolina to the front office of Buffalo. So I wonder if there was anyone that was in Carolina that's now in the front office of Buffalo. Bills fans can help me out with that one, but you get the point. I like this player a lot. He's played almost every game the last 2 years. He has had injury issues in a couple seasons in his career, but mostly has stayed healthy as of late. And he's had 64 and 62 catches as primarily the third receiver on the Commanders, right? Last year, he was the third receiver. The year before that, he was more of the second receiver. But last year, they drafted Jahan Dotson, and they played him and McLaurin on the outside primarily, and Samuel kind of took a step back into the third receiver slot. But, I mean, this is a really explosive player, a missing element of the Bills' offense that I love to see. And he's a versatile player that you can use in a variety of ways, which I'm sure he's also just going to add, to that running game of Joe Brady, because he's used him in that facet before, right? So in terms of snap percentages, in 2019, he played 86%. In 2020, he played 68%. In 2022, he played 71%, and then it dipped to 56% because of Jahan Dotson's presence there in Washington. But I've always been a fan of his game. I always feel like there's been some untapped potential with him. At 27 years of age, he's still fairly young. He's turning 28 in August. So I think he's in his prime right now, and that's perfectly suited for the Buffalo Bills. I was kind of wondering how long or what it was going to take for the Bills to bring a receiver onto their team. And I was also wondering if they would be able to do so given their cap situation. But it appears that they've been able to make a couple tweaks. And once again, the Bills, I feel like, are low-key killing the offseason. They've only made a couple moves right now, but they've cut the right guys, in my opinion. They've freed up the right amount of cap space. I think they've signed a couple of nice depth players. And that's where I'm going to transition to a couple other players that they have signed. So the Buffalo Bills signed another receiver, Mack Hollins. And if I think of anything else on Curtis Samuel, I'll definitely bring it up. But Mack Hollins was signed yesterday, and that's some help as well for Josh Allen. I think Mack Hollins has been just an underrated player throughout his entire career in the NFL. He's an excellent special teamer. He's a beast of a human. He's 6'4", 221. And if I'm not mistaken, once upon a time, he ran a 4.4. So he brings size, he brings speed, he brings a prototypical outside receiver to your offense as like a fourth receiver, but he also brings value in special teams. Actually, in 2022, as a member of the Raiders, he was really good. Like, he had 690 yards on 57 catches and 4 touchdowns. He was their second best receiver behind Devontae Adams in that season, better than Hunter Renfrow. And better than Darren Waller. So he was really their second best target with the Raiders. Last year, he played for Atlanta. He had 251 yards, 18 catches in 13 games as more of a secondary option. And throughout the course of his career, he's sprung up a few times. Like in Miami, he used to have some big plays every once in a while, right? 176 yards, 223 yards in 2020 and 2021. He's been a depth player throughout the course of his career, but he is capable of stretching the field with speed and size, playing on the perimeter if you need him to. He's a good run blocker. So all those things matter as a depth receiver, and he's a good special teamer. And as far as I know, he's a good locker room guy. So he brings a lot of different things to the table, does Mack Hollins. He's cheap. So I could see him filling in as like the fourth receiver on this team, really, when I'm looking at the depth chart. So it will be interesting to see what they do there, but I like the Mack Hollins pickup. And then they also added Mitch Trubisky, which was a while ago, as the backup quarterback, but I think that's a solid move for them just in terms of he was actually looking pretty good in that system a couple years ago, and I'm sure Josh Allen loves him, so that helps as a backup quarterback. Trubisky can run a little bit, has a pretty good arm, has some skills that make him an interesting backup for Josh Allen in terms of transferable traits, but also I think Trubisky just looked the best when he was a Buffalo Bill in those preseasons, and personally, I just think it's a decent backup. I definitely think it's fine, right? It's fine. Trubisky seems to be a good guy to have in that locker room. And then the other side I want to focus on is Nicholas Morrow, who they signed to a one-year contract. He actually started 12 games last year for the Philadelphia Eagles, a playoff team, and he was wearing the green dot as the defensive signal caller in 2023 for the Eagles. So clearly a very smart guy, and he's been around the NFL. He's now kind of a suitcase in his own right, but he's only 28 years old, 6 foot 216, in the mold of those smaller type of linebackers, quicker, faster linebackers that the Bills typically like. And the thing about Sean McDermott is he always gets the most out of these type of guys. But he started for the Raiders for a couple seasons there. He was a rotation linebacker. 2017 through 2019, he played for the Raiders. I thought he was pretty good. 60 tackles, 43, 73 tackles. Started 5, and 8 games. Played 16 in all 3 of those seasons. Then he goes to the Bears for a season where he starts all 17 games, had an interception, had 116 tackles, which is the most of his career. And then last year, I thought he was actually the Eagles' most consistent linebacker on their team, which isn't saying a lot, but that's still something as like your third or fourth linebacker on your depth chart. He played 15 games, 12 starts, 95 tackles, 3 sacks, which tied his career high in 2020. And, overall, I think he moves pretty well. He's a smart guy, and he's capable of playing if you have an injury, right? So that's something that you like about him is like, if Milano gets hurt again, he can go in and play. If somebody gets hurt, like let's say if Terrell Bernard gets injured, he can step up. You have a reliable veteran who's better than A.J. Klein, fits your defense better than A.J. Klein, can move better than A.J. Klein at this point. He's basically an A.J. Klein replacement, right? And Nicholas Morrow, again, 28, turning 29 in July. And taking a look at his grading for the Eagles last year, I wouldn't say it was particularly high because their linebackers certainly struggled. But that was a defense that evolved throughout the year. So for him to be the green dot guy of that defense that changed defensive play callers and somewhat defensive play calling and defensive scheme is pretty impressive. So that gives you kind of a note of what he was. He actually graded as the 36th best linebacker in football last year, which is way higher than I would have thought. That was actually higher than Terrell Bernard, who graded 43rd. So, yeah, that's a really nice pickup for them as a depth backer. But 77 run defense grade is also really good in terms of the PFF stuff. He graded as the 18th best run defense player and the 9th best pass rusher at the linebacker position, playing 778 snaps in the box. He graded as the 25th best linebacker in 2020, his final year in Las Vegas. And in Chicago, he was 64th out of 81. So the last 3 years, he's been an ascending player for the most part. And again, just like a veteran, stable force that's going to be an upgrade from A.J. Klein. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to bring back Dodson or not, but that would obviously be awesome for you because I thought Dodson was really, really good. But if not, I think you've got 3 linebackers that can play. I really like what the Bills are doing here. Bringing back A.J. Epinesa, I thought low-key was a really nice move for you guys. I think, just coming from a perspective of, moving on from Jordan Poyer and keeping Taylor Rapp, I thought was a great move. Maybe Micah Hyde comes back, I'm not sure. But now with this move of wrapping this all up of Curtis Samuel, it enables your first-round pick to be pretty versatile. Like, I don't expect it to be an offensive lineman. It could be, but I wouldn't expect it to be. I could see it still being a receiver, but honestly, I wouldn't use it on a receiver. I could very well see it being on defense. I could see it being at safety. I could see it being at defensive end, defensive tackle. I could see it being on defense. Whoever the best player they think is on defense, or the best player in general, whether that's offensive line, probably anything but quarterback, tight end, or like maybe linebacker. Other than that, I think they could use this pick on any other position. Running back, probably not as well. But, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it was the best tackle available, or the best guard available, or the best center available, or the best receiver available. So this just enables them with Curtis Samuel to stock up their receiving depth chart to a point where I like some of the players they've got there. I like the speed, and I especially like the fit with Curtis Samuel back with Joe Brady in that offense. And just the final thing here, I'm keeping thinking of things. So dating back to 2020, I'm going to take a look at the snaps according to Pro Football Focus for where he played within Joe Brady's offense in that season. So in 2020, he did play a majority of his snaps. In fact, he actually played probably the most amount of snaps that he's ever played in the slot in that offense, which is interesting. And he also had the highest yards per route run of his career at 1.94. Last season, it was the 3rd best of his career at 1.52. He also had the 2nd best yards after catch per reception of his career. So yeah, he did play 99 snaps out wide and 332 in the slot in 2020. So I was just looking at that just because there's some crossover with the system. Was Joe Brady the coordinator in 2019? That is another question to ask, because that's the season he played the majority of his snaps out wide. In 2019, he had 627 yards and 6 touchdowns for the season. He played 70% of the snaps out wide that season. So he's done both, is my point. But I guess it just depends where they see him. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see the fit. I think it's a great player. I think it's an upgrade from Gabe Davis. Let me know what you guys think, Bills fans, in the chat. It's Mitch. Thanks so much for watching. Like the video, and we'll see you soon. Peace.